It is now time for oral questions. The member from Thornhill.
Thank you, Speaker. And my question is for the Premier. For months, Premier, Tim Hudak, myself, other members of the Progressive Conservative Caucus of Ontario have stood in this legislature and urged you to implement a mandatory public sector wage freeze, and on every occasion you have refused. You hid behind every excuse in the book. We told you that without a legislated wage freeze, your budget couldn't hope to put Ontario back on the path to recovery. You rejected our recommendation time and time again. Premier, have you finally seen the light? Do you finally understand that you need to legislate the wage freeze for Ontario's public service? And will you, right now, declare your support for our bill that will seek to do exactly that?
Premier.
Speaker, delighted to receive the question and to join this, I think, very important debate yet again. I want to restate as well that the official opposition and our government, I believe, share the same objective, Speaker. We need to demonstrate restraint when it comes to public sector compensation. Where we differ is in terms of how we are going to get there. I will once again draw to my honourable colleagues' attention the fact that their approach was duly considered by all the other provinces that are running deficits, and there are 8 other, Speaker, as well as the federal government, and they rejected that approach. In fact, the federal government has legislated a 1.5% pay hike, Speaker. So I'd again recommend to my honourable colleague that while we share the same objective, it's important that we put in place a process that will prove to be effective, and that's why we're pursuing the approach that we're taking.
Thank you. Supplementary.
You can't talk out of both sides of your mouth, Premier, and you're doing it again. Either you are with us and support a mandatory wage freeze, or you choose to continue to dig Ontario's finances into a deeper hole. You have spent 2 years dancing around this issue, and it's time to finally declare your intentions and commit to a plan. Will you cut the talking points out for once, and will you tell this House that you will vote for our legislation?
I would caution the member on using language that may be tiptoeing towards saying something that he can't say directly.
No.
Premier.
Speaker, again, I can't agree with my honourable colleague. Look forward to seeing the particular legislation, but I am assuming that it's going to be informed by the approach that they've articulated in this House, and we can't support that. Now, I will say to my honourable colleague, I'll refer him once again to page 70 of our budget, which says as follows: the fiscal plan provides no funding for incremental compensation increases for new collective agreements. Yeah. We couldn't be more explicit, Speaker, in terms of the approach that we're going to bring. Now, to get there, we feel duty-bound to engage our collective bargaining partners in the public sector in the process. We need to sit down with them, we need to negotiate, we need to bargain fairly and firmly. We've also made it perfectly clear, Speaker, if we cannot achieve the objectives stated in the budget, then we will take necessary measures in this very legislature. I think we couldn't be more explicit than that, Speaker.
Final supplementary.
When our leader, Tim Hudak, met with you in November, Premier, he urged you to implement a wage freeze. You rejected that idea. When I met with your finance minister, I urged him to implement a wage freeze. He rejected the idea. Now, a few months later, you claim to have found religion and you're musing about wage freezes. When are you going to finally decide whether you're coming or going?
Premier.
Speaker, I think I've addressed this a number of times, but here's another issue I'd like to throw into the mix, if you will. I am concerned that the official opposition is rejecting some of the choices that we've made to find savings as part of our budget. Yeah. They want to protect a subsidy for racetrack owners that's $345 million every year. Yeah. They want to cut corporate income taxes at a time when we can't afford to. That's $845 million every year. They don't want to make any changes to the Ontario Northland Transportation Commission. That's $135 million every year. They want to keep old jails open, which we can't afford to do, Speaker. That costs us $137 million every year. They want to make more cuts to business education taxes at a time when we can't afford to. That's $300 million every year. Speaker, when we add up what it is that they want to do, it's costing us $2.1 billion on an annual basis. Wow. We can't afford to do that.
Wow. New question, the member from Thornhill.
Thank you, Speaker, and back to the Premier. Yesterday, our Deputy Leader presented you with legal arguments that proved you can legislate a wage freeze today. So the court ruling excuse is out the window. Nobody in this building believes your press. Nobody perhaps except you. Premier, stop talking out of both sides of your mouth. Take a position. Are you ready to concede that we had the right idea all along?
Member, I had cautioned you. Now I'm asking you to withdraw.
I withdraw.
Thank you.
Premier, are you ready to concede that we had the right idea all along about a legislated wage freeze?
Our duty to act responsibly. Speaker to the Minister of Finance.
Sir, Finance.
Mr. Speaker, we will never concede our duty to act responsibly. What we have laid out is a plan. It was laid out in the budget, Mr. Speaker. We are approaching it through the mechanisms available to us that will withstand court challenge, Mr. Speaker, based on legal advice, based on what other provinces have done, based on court rulings in other provinces. Mr. Speaker, in order to achieve the goal that we both agree on, we believe and have solid advice to the effect that this is the appropriate path to ensure that we're able to meet those targets that we've already established in the budget.
Supplementary.
Minister, here is what happened since Tim Hudak's meeting with your Premier and my meeting with you. Moody's gave Ontario a negative outlook. That was a warning. You didn't listen. S&P gave Ontario a negative outlook. You still didn't listen. Moody's downgraded Ontario's credit rating. You made excuses for your failures, and your own economist, Don Drummond, warned you that Ontario faces a $30 billion deficit and a $400 billion total in debt, yet you brought in a budget with billions more in spending, and you refused to implement a wage freeze. With that key cost-cutting measure missing from your budget, is it any wonder we refuse to support your budget motion?
Minister of Finance.
Doesn't just make us wonder, Mr. Speaker. Again, I would emphasize to the opposition that in order to achieve the targets that we've laid out, we are following a course of action. I'll remind him, as I reminded their deputy leader yesterday, Mr. Speaker, that in British Columbia the government lost a case that cost them $80 million, and I think there was 8,000 or so workers. We're talking about 1.2 million workers, Mr. Speaker. We have to respect not only the collective bargaining process, but the Charter of Rights and Freedoms and the right of people to organize and bargain collectively. Mr. Speaker, I believe working together we can achieve these objectives that are laid out in the budget, Mr. Speaker, as we move to preserve and enhance our education healthcare systems, which are vital to a strong and vibrant economy in the future.
Final supplementary.
Speaker, I'm trying very hard to get a direct answer. So, Minister, when will you be direct with this House and with Ontarians who are watching you right now? When? You opposed the legislated wage freeze in October, in November, in December, and every day since, until about 2 days ago. You refuse to listen to us and you reject our recommendations. Everyone here knows it. We were there. You were absent. Now you're squirming because you're caught between that rock and a hard place, between the need to prevent complete disaster and alienating your union pals. Make the right decision for once and be direct. Support our private members' bill that reflects our position on the need for a legislated wage freeze, a position that we have held from the very beginning. Will you vote with us in support of that bill?
Minister of Finance.
No, Mr. Speaker, we won't support that bill because it won't work. It is a political document that's designed to undermine good working relationships in the public and broader public sectors, Mr. Speaker. The plan we've laid out, in fact, is the one that will allow us to achieve the budgetary objectives we've set out. We are less interested in demonizing public servants and others, as the opposition is, than we are in working with everyone in Ontario to move back to balance, to make the investments that are necessary to improve our health and education systems and build that better economy for the future. So, Mr. Speaker, to be clear and unequivocal, their plan won't work. It's a failed document, Mr. Speaker, and we won't support it.
Thank you. New question of the third party.
Thank you, Speaker. My questions to the Premier. Yesterday's announcement of a planned refinery in the riding of Nickel Belt proves that Ontario has the skilled workforce and the ability to process natural resources and create prosperity and good jobs right here in Ontario. But unfortunately, Speaker, we have a long way to go to make those jobs a reality. Yesterday, the government told us they still didn't know whether they plan to allow resources from the Ring of Fire to be exported overseas for processing. Do they know now, Speaker?
Premier.
Speaker, first, pleased to take the question, but first of all, I think we can and should all join in celebrating an extraordinary new investment in Northern Ontario. This is the first proposal for development in the largest mining find in Canada in some 100 years, Speaker. We're talking billions of dollars, thousands of jobs, the generation of wealth that will benefit families in Northern Ontario for decades to come. I think it's great news. And I think our shared responsibility now, Speaker, is to do everything we can to maximize those benefits so that they benefit Northerners, First Nations in Ontario generally, Speaker, and I'm feeling very optimistic and looking forward to any positive, constructive suggestions that come from either opposition party in this regard.
Thank you. Ministry.
Well, Speaker, people hoping for good, sustainable jobs think that this is a pretty important detail, whether or not the materials are going to be exported somewhere else to be processed. The government needs to do a much better job at answering them. They're counting their chickens before they hatch by the looks of it. In testimony at the Federal Standing Committee on Natural Resources, Cliff's senior vice president said this, and I quote, "Our proposed project includes exporting approximately 40% of the product produced on site. They'll need an exemption, Speaker, under the Mining Act to do that. Does the Premier plan on giving them the exemption, Speaker?"
Premier.
Speaker, it is no secret. My honourable colleague has been consistent in this regard. She believes that we should put up walls around the province of Ontario. And Speaker, we live in a global economy, Speaker. We can compete with the best in the world, and we can win. We have the biggest mining sector now in North America. I'm talking exploration, I'm talking production, and when it comes to financing, Speaker, it's the biggest in the world. I say to my honourable colleague, we cannot put up walls. We cannot say to those people who are sending their raw materials here that we're no longer going to process those here. And we cannot say to proponents such as Cliff that there's no way that they can send any of those materials to other parts of the world outside of Ontario to process, Speaker. That is to ignore the reality of a globalized economy, Speaker.
Answer.
And I'm confident at the end of the day, this is a net positive proposal for Northern Ontario and Ontario generally.
Supplementary.
Well, Speaker, the Premier's absolutely right. I have been consistent. New Democrats have been consistent. We believe our natural resources should be putting Ontarians back to work. Our natural resources are a gift. They're a gift and we have to use them wisely. People in Ontario, whether they're from the north or anywhere else, want to see those resources used to create good, sustainable, value-added jobs, not shipped away to create jobs overseas and products that we then buy back at twice the price. Speaker, for people looking for work,